The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, Social Engineering, Your Way to Success. My name is Jessica Gallos of SANS, and today's featured speakers are Justin Henderson and Ishmael Valenzuela, certified SANS instructors and authors, who will be moderating today's webcast. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Ishmael.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you everybody for joining this webinar in this series that we started, a few months ago, right? And we keep coming up with new topics. And a common question that we've had over the last few months, actually, I think we started with this series last year, right, Justin? It was around how we can convince others about what we do and the value of what we do related to training, related to security projects. So essentially non-technical skills. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? Social engineering your way to success. We're going to be sharing essentially our experience, and please, by all means, ask us questions, okay? We want this to be more interactive. We're going to leave some time towards the end. We have not worked on a lot of slides on purpose, right? Not because we're lazy, but because we wanted to, keep the flow, keep the discussion, the conversation, not focus that much on slides, but actually talking about, these problems or kind of obstacles you can find in your careers and all around Defender. So a little bit of an intro. My name is Ismael Valenzuela. I am co-author of Security 530 together with Justin Henderson and Eric Conrad. And I'm GSE 132, but I'm not even going to list the certifications I have because I'm always embarrassed by the number of certifications that Justin has. You can follow me on Twitter on About Security, and I've been doing security for 20 years. And today I'm going to share with you some of the things that I found that worked for me, some of these mental Jedi tricks that worked, that I've used throughout the years, not to deceive anybody, right? We don't want to use social engineering in that sense for this particular webinar. It's not about deceiving others. It's about choosing your words carefully and how you convey the message to get the most out of it, right? And as a professional. So Justin, on to you.
Yep, I'm here. I signed in. Now he says there's not very many slides, not to be lazy, but no, okay. Now really, this is to be way more low key than normal. We're not trying to flood you with technical content. We're just sharing what's worked for us, and hopefully maybe some of it will work for you. I am the author of 555, Sim with Tactical Analytics. I co-author 530 with good old Ishmael here, and I also co-author 455 with John Hubbard, another sim course. I am in this webcast going to highly reflect on having 61 certifications. What that means is I have a lot of experience getting other people to pay for my certifications. So normally I kind of glance through that because I really do want to be humble, but for street credibility, specifically for this webcast, I have 61 certifications. I don't know if I even paid for 10 of those out of pocket. That means I was able to talk my employer, maybe one or two of them actually my family helped with. Like, I was able to get people that either like me, some that didn't like me, some that love me, my family, at least I think they do. I got them to pay for these. And a lot of this was not me saying, help me, help me, help me. And in the back of the mind, that is definitely part of this equation. But it was different ways of portraying the conversation for mutual respect and benefit. Even when I'm working with folks that quite frankly didn't like me. So I also own my own contracting business, H&A Security Solutions. We do a lot of like MSSP, co-managed solutions, so on and so forth. So with that, let's kind of dive into this. And we really only have, I think we only have 8 content slides, to be honest. And they're not really even slides, they're placeholders for discussion. And I'm
lots of memes.
totally fine with someone putting on chat, hey, what about this? What about that? On Twitter for this webcast, we actually have this huge chain going where people are actually asking, could you help maybe put pointers for when people have favoritism or they don't like you, which then kind of spilled over into what about employers who are potentially sexist? Where applicable, I will try to share experience, and Ishmael, I'm sure you will too. I was thinking more and more on the sexism, and to be honest, I could point at key internet things on how to handle that, but I don't want to because I can't speak to that one from experience. I've not been discriminated against via sex, via religion, via skin color, any of that. So I don't think I can share from that. I can share from my experiences where I've had employers or bosses who don't like me, yet I still was able to get certifications, education, training. So I'll kind of talk to that. And Ishmael, is there anything else on like Twitter or anything that people are reaching out that we want to make sure we address on this?
No, that was one of the questions, and I'm just like, as we're doing this live, I'm on Twitter, so I'm also like asking people if you have questions. So please type your questions either on Twitter. I'll be able to see them and chime in, or here on this platform. But yeah, I mean, this struggle is real for a lot of people out there, right? And obviously we don't want to minimize that, but at the same time, it's like we can talk about our experience. I've been a manager myself, and I've been, and I know, Justin, you're a manager as well. You manage people on a daily basis. So we can also put ourselves on the other side, right? But of course, every person goes through different situations, and we can judge situations we haven't been in or we don't have the knowledge of directly. But if you have any specific concerns that you want to share, we'll be happy to talk about them. And the things we're going to share here are things that should help you regardless, right, of what the situation is. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes you are in the middle of a toxic situation around toxic people.
Yep.
At some point, the only thing you can do, you find yourself in that situation, is to, it could be to leave that. And I know, because I was myself at one point in that type of situation. It took me a long time to realize that it was affecting me personally and physically, even mentally, emotionally, and I was able to let it go, right? But it's a struggle. And so if you want to talk about that, we can discuss it here, and we can share.
We will try to speak off what our direct experience. Like, I mean, I got 61 certifications. I can tell you the things I'm going to talk about, they epically worked for me. Ishmael downplays it. He has tons of certifications. So we do have experience. We are experts in this area. So we will carry this conversation. It's not going to be theoretical. This is what actually has worked, should work. I'll kind of start off with, in my career, trying to get certifications. I don't know why, but personally, I don't know why I got so many certifications. If I were to stop and ask myself that, I honestly don't know why at 61. I didn't have a number set in mind. The GSE was about the only thing that I was like, I gotta have that. I want to work to that. Yet it's kind of funny, because if you walk in my office, and I'm a business owner now, I have employees and they come to me rather than the other way around. But even when I was full-time employed, I never hung plaques. I have a whole bunch of SANS challenge coins from winning like net worths and stuff. They were never on my desk. Like, I always got these because I was trying to compete against myself and to push myself. And to be honest, I really wanted to learn. And if someone was willing to pay for that for me, then I did it. And if there was a certification, to me, it was proof to myself that at least I could meet that minimum bar. And yes, does it help me job hop? Yeah, it totally did, and I did a little bit of that. But when I would go to do these, there's kind of two different approaches. Most of the time, I went with the right side. Help me, help you, help me, which really the conversation was, let me help you, help me, help you. It's kind of the reverse, because the employers don't, they really, like, I'm a business owner. If I had an employee come to me and said, I would like to have training on XYZ, and it costs, well, let's pick on Sam's for a second, $6,000. Well, but I want the GX exam too for $7,000. Oh, then we freak out because we assume the employer is going to, quite literally, I apologize, crap their pants. Because $7,000 to you and I, that's a lot of money. To a business, like my business is not like this multi-million-dollar enterprise, but $7,000, when someone comes to me and says, I'd like to take a $7,000 training, put yourself in their shoes. I don't care that it's $7,000. What I care about is that I get more than $7,000 from you out of it. So if I can come up with a plan to make the company more than $7,000 in exchange for $7,000 in training, they tend not to care. So, and I'll kind of show this on the next slide here in a second, but there's some actual practical math applications where you can show you're more efficient. Maybe you can complete something that otherwise would require outsourcing. You can make your boss not look better than they actually are. Like I've had some, I don't think they're on here. I had some frighteningly, what's the nice way to put this? I've had some management team members who were, I'll use the words, not as educated or as experienced as they should be. I'll put it that way. I'm trying to be nice here. And so what I needed to do in order to get training in those situations was, it wasn't monetary, it was I needed to help them look good. And so the conversations changed because the kind of the social engineering aspect of these conversations had to be adapted to who approved the training. If I had a manager that they just wanted to look good and be impressive and show that they have, you know, they're getting their projects done on time or under budget, or like what matters to them, that's how you gear the conversation. Ishmael, I know you got some slides on this, so I'm not going to go too far on that. We'll talk then.
Yeah, no,
But
that's
then on
fine.
this, yeah, go. Oh yeah, slide 5. Slide 5 of 8. Right.
And I was also going to mention that, and you know that as a business owner as well, that for some businesses they can even deduct the training. It's a tax deduction. So don't feel bad going out to, you know, to your manager and asking for this. Sometimes, and I've seen employees that have been in these situations, like, oh, this is too expensive, as you said, right? They're not going to pay this. So if you don't ask, that's something I've learned, right? If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it.
That goes to like Ishmael. Have you done like the DISC profile training, where like you have a dominant personality, you're a cheerleader personality, you're kind of an introvert? Like, have you done any of those before?
No, I haven't done that. Should I?
So like multiple of the businesses that I used to work for required these as part of the onboarding process. And so I think if I remember right, the stat, it's like 51% of people, at least in the United States, are a S type personality, which means they don't want to be in the limelight. They're kind of backseat. And those are the type of folks that really want the training, but they don't want to ask because they don't want to. Can I have $1,000 for training? And they don't want to get yelled at or make them feel like they're, you know, being greedy, and you're not. As an employer, I get frustrated when because to me it's like an insult that my employees aren't confident enough, or they feel like I might overshadow them or yell them down, because I want them, like, I'm kind of the opposite. My employees, I don't think they've ever asked for training that I've denied, except for one person because he was underperforming so badly the entire time that we had to let him go. But they ask me, it's like, oh, it's $100, it's $1,000, it's $7,000. I've never denied them, because all I ask in return is that that training help you do your job better, and you can prove to me that you can. And so I actually, like, I force it on their 10 goals, and I want to see it. And the dollar amount is not the number one thing I'm worried about. And if you think that's the case, well, maybe you work for a small company, in which case it is. But again, next slide, I'll show you kind of how to address that. So before I switch slides, I've also had the employers that I don't want to train you, because if I do, you'll get certifications and you're worth more money and you'll leave. And I've had employers that was literally their mindset. It wasn't a question, they would tell me that. So one, that's a really uncomfortable conversation, because it's like, well, what do you say? You know, if I get you certified, you'll just up and leave. So no. Oh, I mean, that's uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable. And so I had to gear my conversations to around, you know, in a kind of a sense, what they're saying is, you're trying to steal from us. We're going to invest in you, and you're going to take the money and you're going to run. When really, pulling out the Lord of the Rings here, I'm not trying to rob you. I'm trying to help you. And so a lot of what Ishmael and I are talking about here is all about how you word the conversation. I'm stealing from Ishmael's slide that's ahead of time. Marketing people are fantastic at this. Like, they can sell you something, and it's all about the way they worded it. They didn't lie, they've changed it, and it, in our mind, the way the brain processes it, it changes differently. I've had very combative management that does not want me to be trained because they fear that I'll leave. And some of those conversations, just throwing this out here, were, well, I don't know if you realize this, but I read at least a book a month, if not a book a week. So if you're concerned that you're going to overtrain me to the point where I can leave and find a better paying job, that's already happening. And I'm not being combative when I'm saying this, by the way. That's where you take this to an epically bad, you don't want to do that. That's danger, danger, danger. It's just, hey, you know, quite frankly, I read a book a month, sometimes a week, and this was true of me, especially when I was younger. Now I don't do that as quite as much. It's probably one a quarter maybe at this point, but it used to be one a month, sometimes one a week, that I would just chew through IT books. And I was like, look, if I want to get a job somewhere else, I can, but quite frankly, this job has a lot of opportunities. I feel I can make some significant improvements to help everybody out. And you notice right there, I'm already changing the conversation. Look, I probably could leave if I wanted to, but I like it here. I like working for you. Now, I didn't actually like working for those individuals. I just never said that. And I never tried to express that. So I got them to understand, appreciate me. And some of those bosses, I still to this day don't have any respect for them. Like, some of them I think were very unethical, but they loved me. They might not have when I started, and I still also have had some managers that still today don't like me, but so okay. Ishmael, feel free to pipe up, otherwise I'm just gonna.
Yeah, no, it's totally. I'm not going to ask you what company you were working for. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But
McAfee. No.
I was going to say that most
kidding.
often than not,
Ishmael works for McAfee, which is why that's funny.
yes, and I'm happy. I'm a happy person, so don't worry. No, but most often than not, what happens is that people leave because they don't get this training, right? And they know that other peers, other friends, people they know of, they work for this other company that pays this training. So, and if you got some training and you left, it's not because you got the training, it's because there's some other underlying problems, as you know, maybe you were saying, Justin, that makes you make that move, because nobody wants to leave an environment where you feel valued, you feel respected, right? You get training because hopefully you're going to be allowed to apply some of these ideas, right, at work, and that's what people want. So if you're a manager and you have that fear, think that typically it's the other way around. People leave because they don't get enough training, or they don't get what they think they deserve. And the other thing I think it's important to understand is we need to understand that the companies we work for the most part, they're not in the business of doing security. So when you're going to ask for training, you have to tie this to some sort of a business need. I mean, if I go to my employer now and I ask for, I don't know, I want to do a training on photography. Yeah, I would love to, or gardening. Actually, you know what? I would love to learn gardening. I know you have a farm, Justin, so maybe one day I'll go there and ask you to teach me some of that, because I would love to, but I don't think my employer is gonna, you know.
Yeah, I don't know anything about gardening. Miniature horses, sure. Gardening, no, not so much.
Well, so the point is, I'm not going to be able to get the money for that because it doesn't have to do anything with what my business makes money out
Yep.
of. So find something that it's a business need. It could be a new project, right? It could be something that an opportunity related to a merger or an acquisition, or some sort of an incident, right? Related to an incident that you had in the past.
Companies going cloud, like it's
Right.
happening whether you like it or not, and they need people to do it. Should they hire new people, or do you agree to get training to do that? Do you fill
Exactly.
a niche?
Exactly.
And
I think that goes
fits
well with the.
perfectly here.
Yep.
Because one of the things I used to do, like the first SANS class I asked to get paid, well, they're more expensive than other training I've taken. They told me no. No, they said no. A lot of folks, when you hear no, you would just stop. No, I didn't stop. I was not aggressive about this, but I just changed the conversation and I came back from a different angle. Hey, we're, in this case, we already had network security monitoring, but it wasn't very tuned. We had IDS. I felt we did that pretty good, but I went through and I found the course. It wasn't Sec 530 at the time because it didn't exist. It would have been great to have that earlier on, but I went through and I printed off the course syllabus that I wanted to take. This one was actually 505, the Windows class, and I took a highlighter into everything in the outline that was on the current security list of things to do. I highlighted. Here are things that we're getting ready to implement that if I took this training, I could do it. I could potentially do it faster. Some of these we were going to pay to outsource. And so I put, well, I actually had quotes. I was like, next gen firewall, we're going to switch from this vendor to this vendor. And we have a quote that it's going to cost $5,000 to do it. And then it will take a month later for a different team to come in to do $10,000 for application control. That's 15 grand. We all know that just because you outsource something, when the professional service team leaves, you still get stuck tuning the device. Otherwise, it's this big heap of junk. And some of these I could go back in tickets. We did a similar project, and after they left, we still spent 22 hours on this. So I could mathematically add up. Look, we're going to spend 15 grand. That's already in the budget. You're getting ready to spend this. If I do this training costs this amount, and then I could handle these. Plus, I could handle, like, we haven't even talked about doing like SSL inspection or decrypt port mirroring because I didn't even know we could do that. And so that's not even in this quote from the vendor. And we could start to do these things. And they help us find modern malware because they're doing this. And I'm willing to cross-train the other staff. That way they'll know how to do it too. That way if I get hit by the proverbial beer truck, someone else can still do the job. And quite frankly, if we do it ourselves, it'll be better tuned because we'll know how to do it even when the professional service team leaves. And so for that business, it was like, we'll actually save money. It'll help you do the job that you're already supposed to be doing better. And like, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, $7,000 in exchange for not having to spend 15. They're still doing labor, but hopefully that'll be less with training. And then you know what they said? They're like, oh, you know what? That sounds great. And no. I was like, whoa. Go ahead.
I'm thinking sometimes like people have, like I know this because like, coming new, you don't know how much people charge for these things.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have there, I think is valuable, right? It's like, oh, so this is what people typically charge for these things. And if you have questions around that, you can ask us, right? We do these mentoring sessions every now and then. You can reach out to us and we can give you an idea that can help you to justify.
Email me and I'll just I'll tell you, because that's what the business I do is I'm consulting managed services. So if you're like, how much would it cost to do X? I'll tell you. And that's a number from an actual vendor. I
Right.
mean, I don't know, Ishmael, if you're allowed to do that on the McAfee side, but we can get you those numbers and be pretty darn close because it's what we do for a living. And
Yeah,
that's definitely helpful. So
absolutely.
in that situation, they told me no after I thought I had the fish on the hook. I thought they were going to say yes. The stars were aligning, but then they stopped, they thought, and then the answer was no. I was like, hey, what's the problem? Well, the problem wasn't the $7,000. The problem after asking was they didn't want to give me time off. They didn't want to send me to a 6-day class because then I would be gone for 6 days. So money wasn't the issue, it was the time away. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, okay, tell you what, I'll work after hours the nights that I'm traveling. I'll be available during training because I'll have my laptop. And so this time is not really time off. I'll be working my 40-ish hours no matter what. And then they said yes. Because from a business, I can tell you, like right now for my business, the number one issue I have with employees do training is not the cost of training. I am terrified when they take a week off. It is so disruptive from staffing and getting people to fill spots, especially when I do professional services, that it's a nightmare. I need to make sure someone's available to do the work. I need to make sure that something I have on the schedule that I'll get done in August gets done in August. $7,000, if someone's gone, I almost have to pay someone else to fill that hole, and that's more expensive than the training costs. And this was true even when I was full-time employed, because their biggest fear was, well, if you're gone for a week, how are we going to get these projects done? Information security is so fast-paced that time sometimes is the more important issue. So one thing you need to ask yourself, are you willing to work after hours? Are you willing to bring a laptop and work in the middle of a training event? Like, what are you going to do to make this as pain-free as possible from the employer? If you're willing to do that and you put your cards on the table, well, there's a good chance that you're going to get the training, which is going to equate to more work temporarily, but you'll feel more confident. I always felt more confident, even though I technically had to spend, those might be an 80-hour work week and you're away from family. I felt like the fact that they're at least willing to do it showed that they did care, even though I was a little disgruntled that I had to do double work for that week. Because I'm not getting a raise, but they did just invest $7,000 for you. So, or whatever the training cost goes. So, Ishmael, all yours.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. Like in my case as well, I think the first class I ever took from SANS was 2007, and it was when I was back in Europe. Very little event in Brussels, and it was Security 508, right? The forensics and incident response class. But one of the key things is that as soon as you come back from that class, you gotta put in practice what you're doing and showing the value, right, of what you're doing, and that's kind of a key topic for me, like showing value. But for that, you need to figure out what value means to the business and especially to the manager, right? I mean, there's something called manage the manager. You need to understand what is that motivates your manager. Sometimes when we get into these technical discussions on how to do OSINT, open source intelligence, right? Profiling the adversaries, and that's fascinating, isn't it? It's like, wow, yeah, I need to learn about their behaviors, and we talk about MITRE ATT&CK. And let me ask you something. Do you put as much time as you do that into trying to profile your manager, right? And I'm not saying anything creepy, right? You don't have to do anything creepy or illegal, please. I'm saying just understand we all use different language. We all communicate in a different way. So you need to figure out what is that is going to facilitate that conversation. And instead of getting adversarial, right, what Justin was saying before, you don't want to go that path. Things are not going to go well for you if you do that. But how do you get to that point where you find out this is what it's going to make my manager look good, and you go after that because it's going to help him or her, and it will help you, right? So that's that typically works. And I can say, for example, I think it was the second class I took. And by the way, it was related to the first class I took as well. Second class was 503, intrusion detection in depth. And I remember, sitting in that class, it's like, wow, I thought I had some visibility on my networks. Now I realize I don't have any. We need to turn the lights on. How do we do this? And I started to, okay, I need to deploy these sensors, right? So I can have this information. And back then, by the way, there was no security onion. Doug Burks wasn't working on this yet, or maybe he had that idea, but we didn't have it yet. He was probably like maybe Justin and myself, just like deploying these things manually with the scripts. And along the way came NSM Now, and then security onion just made everybody's life so much easier. But I was wondering about, how do I actually go to my employer and ask them for permission to deploy these sensors across my network so I can have this visibility? And that's a very common question that when we teach, right, Justin, students come up to us and say, yeah, no, I love what you showed me, what I can do with, Zeek, what I can do with all of these cool projects, the Elastic Stack and all this, but how do I deploy this, maybe open source solutions? My employer will never allow me to do this. We use, this vendor, we use this, we use that. But that there's a benefit in complementing these products with these other maybe capabilities. So this is what I did. You have two roads essentially. One is you come up with you run your numbers and say, okay, I need these appliances, or I need these servers in the cloud, or I need these instances and these fees and these subscriptions, and you put it together and say, okay, this is going to cost you 50 grand, right, to start with. That's one approach. The other approach is go with the dirty, cheap, whatever you can find around you, legacy equipment, and install that in there, which is not ideal. I know it's far from ideal, and start collecting some information, and then start selling the need to your organization and saying, hey, this is what I can do. So that's what I did. I didn't have the ownership of the in the organization to go and say, we're going to deploy all of these sensors. So I made friends. That's always a very good thing, right? Making friends, especially with the network guys. And I asked the network guy, hey, at my office, can we deploy this? You have one of these servers. I saw we're going to decommission this. Let me use it. Old machine, right? Can you span a port? This is just a POC. And I sent an email saying, hey, I learned something I want to put into practice. This is going to be totally passive. It's not going to break anything. And I'm just going to run it in this little office to see what's the traffic going out to the internet. No harm, right? No risk. And they don't have to spend a dime on it. We already had that hardware hanging around. So I did that. And I installed, my tools and Squeal, and, I was doing full PCAPs. And then I spent quite some time going through all that traffic and trying to put together pretty charts. If you can actually, infographics are awesome, are amazing, because as we know, managers love infographics and pie charts and summarized information. So a month after I get the approval to do that, I started jumping into these meetings that we had as a team, and I presented that information. Said, hey, CIO, here's the information, right, that I got this week with the tools that you allowed me to install. Okay, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so we can see, there's some protocols here that we don't know. There's all these things going on. Okay, so Ismael, maybe you can follow up with this, with this person or that person, and started that way. Second month, I show them, right, more data. Third month, more data. Fourth month, more data. Fifth month, there's no report. So Ismael, what happened with the report? Now the CIO is asking for that report. And then that's when you have to be prepared. It's like, well, you know what? I don't have the report this month. What happened? Well, the machine we were using, it died. It was an old machine. I couldn't run much with it. So, it died, and I don't have anything else to work with. Oh, Ismael, so can you do this for me? How much would it take to have a proper system? Nothing crazy, but something better. And maybe something that we can deploy not just in that office, but across all these other offices around the world. And it's like, coincidentally, you know what? I actually have something here. I have a spreadsheet with a rough idea of how much that would cost. Guess what? I had my project accepted right away. Before I know it, I have all the hardware and I have the support, the management support to build that. And I'm pretty sure that you, Justin, you've had similar experiences where instead of like going up front and saying, hey, this is how much it's going to cost you before showing what's the value, what's in it for the business.
Yeah, I've had some mind-boggling versions of that. Like I had similar. Basically, I had an employer tell me that I was full of crap, and that I was making the statement that we're being attacked all the time, because in information security, we're being attacked all the time. I didn't have any data to back up that discussion. So one of the points, my boss, the director, just like, hey, you're full of crap. Quit saying that. Just shut your mouth. I'm tired of hearing that. And it was very abrupt. I mean, I was kind of asking for it because you're making statements like that and you're not proving it. So I put a network security and monitoring system out in front of our firewall, same thing as what Ishmael's basically doing. And I categorized all the attacks, like port scans, exploits, you name it. And I handed it to him. I was like, see, I told you. Okay, that time, that manager was actually, we were good friends, so I was able to do that with him. And he took it, ran with it, loved it. And that location went from having one of those to, at this point, about 1,600. Something I never would have factored in the budget because I thought it would have been too much. But the benefits of the system were weighed against it, and they were one of the largest security onion deployments in the world. So it can happen. It's all about presenting the data. Ishmael, before we move slides, I didn't realize it, but the questions are coming in. They're in the question panel, not the chat panel.
Yes. Yeah, same here. I'm looking at those now. So
okay,
we can go through them.
Like I'm just kind of looking at these. What's your thought on being patient for training? I found that it's faster for me to pay for my own training versus waiting months and months for training to be approved. To me, if it's taking more than 6 months, I'm going to say it's an organization that I either really need to change tactics because they're not understanding the benefits of training, that they're probably running so fast that they never actually value training. And it might actually be an organization that they're not going to budge on that. I would say I've been able to get all of my training approved and paid for usually within 1 to 3 months. Ishmael, has that been about what you've seen?
Yeah, I think that more than that, it looks like they're not willing to pay for it more than anything else, right?
Yep.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I would gear towards it, but that's where you need to start having these different ways of presenting it, because if you're just asking for training and then waiting for it to get approved, it might be where you need to not poke and prod, but present the case differently, like some of the stories we're telling, whether that's presenting factual data, infographics, telling a story, showing where they'll save money. Like there's different tactics you can try for that. And if they still don't budge, because there are organizations that they just quite frankly, they don't care. And you could say they're too busy to do something, but that's another way of saying they don't care.
Yeah. You can use the same approach, as I was mentioning before, when you want to, let's say in my case was installing all these network security monitoring sensors, but you could do the same for training, right? Maybe invest some time on your own to train yourself without spending a lot of money, just like what, it's available out there on the internet, webinars, tools, and put something together so management can visualize what's the value. I think sometimes, since we're talking to people that cannot visualize what's the value of doing these, they don't know what type of training it is, or it's just like, a bunch of people that they're going to be hanging out and having fun. You have to help them to visualize that. Yeah. And once you do that, it's like, hey, I hit a wall here. I could get you here and give you all of this, but I need help. Now, if that help is a consultant, right, it's going to cost you X. If I get this training, I might be able to get you there. Maybe it will take me a few more weeks, but it was going to be cheaper.
Yep. And to be honest, like in your question, you flat out basically said, I'll wait so long and then I just pay for it for myself. That right there, to me, proves how passionate you are about training. And if they continue to hold it off, to me, I would just flat out be like, hey, look, I've proved that this is important and it's not about me job hopping. I'm doing this because it helps me do my job. That would be part of a salary raise discussion, or that the next year you really kind of expect there to be better training, because it's important to you. It clearly is. It doesn't need to be confrontational, but the fact that you paid for some out of pocket, that's impressive. You should voice that. I am gonna, Scott, can you talk to how you pursued the GSE and how long it took? It took me less than a year, but let me table that until the end, because that's more of how to train, and it's kind of off topic. Plus, I know you know me, so you can, if we don't have time, you can still talk to me about that anyway. There was one question that I think is a really good question. I think the person's left, but I'm still going to do it. It is, should you require a contract that states if you do training, you can't leave the company for a certain period of time, or you have to pay it back? And that is a hot topic. It is becoming more and more prevalent. I see that. The last full-time job I did had one of those that I signed. When I left, they didn't make me pay it back, but that's actually a HR issue, because if you enforce payback for some employees but not others, you can get sued. So if you're gonna do it, it sounds bad, but you actually need to enforce it. I, as a business owner, think that's I don't like it. It's a bad idea. I personally will say within the first year of employment, that is true. And I technically don't do that. I only do it for the first 6 months. If I pay for your training in the first 6 months and you quit on me, you owe me back because you haven't proven yourself. After that, I could send you to $20,000 worth of training in a year and you don't owe me a dime, because I love and I respect my employees and they've earned it. So I tend to think maybe on a temporary early, because you're worried about job hopping, because that is a legitimate thing, but not for, personally, I don't think that's a good long-term strategy because it devalues your employees. Ishmael, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have to say personally, I've worked for, several organizations in the last 20 years, and I never had anybody doing that with me. I know many, big firms, they do this as well, but it all depends on the culture of the organization. I think if somebody does that with me, there is no trust, as you say, right? There's no implicit trust in there. That's not the, to me, it's not like the ideal scenario. I totally agree. If you leave in the first few months, that's a whole different thing. But
it's like a prenup.
Right. I would say it also brings another conversation, which is like, should everybody have training? And as a manager, I can tell you, I also want to see who is worthy of that, right? And I want to be careful with what I say, because I don't want you to think that, oh, it's like you're saying that some people don't deserve to have training. What I'm saying is you have to also earn it somehow. And you know who kind of employees are going to be willing to go the extra mile. And hey, I'm an instructor as well, so I see, and sometimes you see that, like, people, it's like, oh, I'm just here sitting just to get the CPEs, right? Now, is that valid? Well, I mean, some organizations, they have big budget and they just need to use it. Okay, that's fine. That's not kind of I've never been in that position, right? Every time I start a training is because I wanted to learn and I wanted to apply that. But as a manager, if you have a budget that it's limited, you cannot send everybody to training. You also need to say, okay, who's willing to put this into practice, and that's why we're saying here you have to show value. So it's a win-win situation.
Yep. And then one more question before I go back into the content. I don't know the answer to this one, Ishmael, but do you know if they replaced the social engineering course? Because I knew it did go away. To my knowledge, I'm not aware we have a new one.
I'm looking at that right now. I don't see it. Now
I know we have an OSINT, but that's not anywhere near social engineering. I'm
not aware of that, but sometimes SANS takes something away to just like kind of upgrade it or renew it, and it comes out with a different name. So I would keep an eye on that, but I don't have specific
and then-
information about that one.
And then the other one's not really exactly a question, but Nadeem, if you want to work for me, you can go ahead and apply. I do love my
We
employees.
can send you the resume.
They are 100% what runs my company. Without them, I'm nothing. So I don't think most businesses think exactly that way. But there's a lot of good businesses out there as well. So Ishmael, I'll let you go back into it because I know you're still going in
Yeah.
first here.
No, it's very similar to what we were just discussing. This was another. In this case, it was consulting, right? I was doing for a large firm, and lots of political issues, right? And you cannot just like go and raise your hand and say, "Hey, you need to address this. This is bad." That always puts people into a defensive situation, right? If you come to me and say, "Hey, you're doing that wrong," this is human nature. You're going to be defensive about it. So in this particular case, I knew this customer had a problem, big problems. They had a policy, password policy that sucked. It was really bad. And they had all these SSH, TCP/22, right, RDP exposed to the internet. You probably know a lot of organizations like that. And you have two options, either going around and pointing fingers and saying, hey, you need to do this, this is bad. Typically, people don't react well to this. Or option two, gathering the data and presenting the data. So that's what I did. I deployed a few honeypots, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about honeypots and the word deception before we finish. And I put it out there, and I started to collect information. I summarized it, again, put it into one-page infographic, and I said, look, these are the top 20 usernames and passwords that people use against these applications, right, RDP or SSH on the internet. This is happening every single second, and yes, it is hitting our IP addresses as well. So I hope we're not using any of these username passwords on any of our infrastructure, because otherwise we're owned. Do you guys know if we are using any of this? Now you're putting the ball on them, right? You're just like presenting factual data, and this report means somebody has to do something about this. Now the ball is on their court. What are they going to be doing? Right? No, like CISO or CIO is going to ignore that stuff, right? Somebody will have to take that action, and that's going to lead to something. In fact, what it ended up happening is that they asked me to put together a monthly threat report where I would share that monthly threat report. First, it was with the CISO. Then the CISO asked me to send this to all of the directors in this organization on a monthly basis. And that became like my platform, right? Now I had a platform that I could use to kind of share the message that I wanted to share. Something else I quickly wanted to talk about is the danger zone, right? And I think we all understand this really well right now, the flattening the curve. I see a lot of organizations that when they are in incident response mode, they are obviously very noticeable. You are noticeable. You are needed, right? Because you're putting out fires every single day. Now, you know, as well as we know, that's not the best security environment. First of all, it's not sustainable. You're gonna be burnt out, right? But you know, it will give you hopefully the support you need to do some security projects, right? And eventually, I've seen organizations that over the time, right? Maybe you get the training, right, from SANS to do all these things, and you start flattening the curve. You have less incidents. But then that's when you get into the danger zone, right? The curve has been flattened, but you now need to communicate better and more often, because what happens is that security is not noticeable. We know, right? Good security is not noticeable. You're doing the right thing, but now you're not communicating value. I know of one organization that went through this. They started to do all the things that we talk about in Security 530, the defensible security architectures, implementing all these things, and they had people. They trained them. Really nice, set of people. They were well trained in threat hunting. They started to do all the things that we usually say in these webinars. And over time, a vendor came along and said, hey, you know what? This was years ago. You see all these expensive people that you have to train, I can replace them with shiny appliances, right? Shiny object syndrome. I can replace them with appliances. Why would you detect things when you can prevent bad things from happening? Does it sound familiar? Right? Now it wouldn't be appliances. It would be this cloud service. So we're going to do this on the cloud, so you don't have to do it. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Well, it turns out that that's a decision the CFO, right, and the CISO made. They looked at the numbers and it's like, yeah, this makes sense. We haven't had any big incidents in the last few years, so why would we keep these expensive people with us? Let's get rid of them. Fast forward a year later, they had a breach. They had a problem, right? So lesson learned. You might be doing all the right things. I don't know, some people actually mentioned this on Twitter. I'm doing all the right things. Well, think about, I'm not saying the problem is with you, right? There's some organizations that, you know, it is what it is, but try to see how you can convey value better and use the techniques that we're using here. Sometimes you have to, you know, change a little bit the language that you use. And here I have to say, you know, Justin is a master of this. Justin, you're always like using really good illustrations. You probably remember the flying baby from the last one.
Yeah.
Can you remind me what the flying baby was?
Yeah, flying baby. It's, I have a newborn child, and as they start to crawl around, like, you have to put all those little plastic things on the outlets so they don't stick their fingers in there and get fried, right? That's traditional security. Like, we know where the dangerous entry points are and we seal them off. We have perimeter security. But flying baby syndrome is the cloud. Enter the cloud. The outlets are everywhere because the baby can fly up and touch anything. Your data is anywhere and everywhere, and you're an exhausted mom or dad, and you're just like, make it stop. And that analogy is pointless, but it communicates. And people, even though it's not really a perfect illustration here, people start to think about it, and they're like, oh yeah, I kind of can see where you're going with that. You're crazy, but I can follow what you're picking up. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
You know, some people think that just because, yeah, we like scientific approach, we're into a technical field and we like the data, and that speaks by itself. No, I'm sorry. You have to wrap it in a story. And illustrations are very powerful, right? So think about it, how you can use this, because this is an education, right? You have to educate management or, you know, the business, sometimes even your coworkers on this is the value of what we're doing here. So think about things that can be easily visualized, like the flying baby. It's perfect, right? You can, as Justin was saying that, I was visualizing the flying baby going all over the place. It doesn't have to be something hard. Pick things that people are aware of. Like, I don't know, I may love golf, but if I'm using illustrations about golf and the people I'm talking to, they never ever played golf or watched it, it's like, it's pointless, right? So pick simple things, and always when you use an illustration, you want to apply this is why I'm using this, right? Bring it back to your point. It has to highlight the point you want to convey, and you're going to realize it's very, very powerful. It can help you a lot in how you communicate. Verbal communication and also the written communication by using less words, more pictures, right? Infographics. And Justin was talking about marketing before, and whether you like it or not, this is, again, human nature. We like new things. And this is what it is in the industry, right? The security industry as well. We sometimes rehash things that we know of, and we add next gen. We sprinkle a little bit of machine learning or analytics, blockchain, whatever you want to
cloud,
right, new buzzwords in there. Exactly. Now it's not about EDR, it's about XDR, right? And SIEM doesn't sound cool anymore, right? Unless you say like cloud-based SIEM. Oh, that's a whole different thing, right?
And correlation still sounds cool, but not SIEM.
Right. Analytics. Absolutely. What are you going to do?
Analytics. Dang it! I knew I got it wrong. You're right.
So here's the idea. Use the same thing that vendors use against you. Use it for your own benefit, right? Think about these leading questions. Every good marketing professional knows about this. How you ask the question can prime, right, the answer already. The other person. Like, for example, if you say something like this: "Hey, what design Was one design easier or harder to use than another? Let's say that you have redesigned a website, for example, and you ask somebody this. Well, it doesn't convey anything positive or negative. But if you say something like, isn't the new design easier to use than the old one? You're kind of like conveying that, hey, there's something new that it's better, right? So consider that those changes are better. It makes this website easier to use. So in this industry, there is certain words that I suggest you don't use, right? And I explained this in class. We have a section on tripwires and red herrings, right, Justin?
Yep.
And we essentially talk about honeypots and honey tokens.
Big reason, yes.
But we don't say honey tokens or honeypots right away, and we don't use the word deception.
Or active defense, or hacking back, or like we don't use certain words. We don't do some of those things, period. But you absolutely can't say certain words. Like deception to me is a big one that is, it is acceptable to apply deception techniques. It is unacceptable to use it in language and communication.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a brief, really quick example of that. A real story happened to me. I was consulting for this big organization, and they had problems with detecting lateral movement, which is, it's a big deal, right? It's not easy. And actually using tactical honeypots and honey tokens in a tactical way, right, in the network, it's a great way of having this. And the best thing about it is that, as we explained in class, you don't have any false positives if you do it in the right way. So I presented this, and they were like, no, we cannot do that. Just what Justin is saying. We can't do deception. It's never going to go through the legal team, you know, HR. Oh, enticing somebody to do something illegal? It's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Never mind. You primed them already. You said deception. That's all they can think about.
Game over. You're done. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Done. Exactly. So fast forward months later, and they have an incident, and we kind of come back to the same conversation. Hey, what can we do around this? So, all right, don't worry. You know, let me go and analyze this, because there's something new we might be able to use. Now you created some expectation. Oh, something new. Wow, that's awesome, right? Now I worked on that report that weekend. On Monday, I sent the CISO this report that said mitigating, you know, the risk of lateral movement and pass the hash by using, wait for it, early warning systems. So of course, think about what those early warning systems were. Honeypots, yes, but I didn't use that word anywhere. I made sure, right, Control F, search for word honeypot deception, nowhere in the document. So I presented this. It's going to be free, open source. We're going to use it in this specific mode. We're going to deploy these early warning systems in these locations, and this is how it's going to work. You know what? They loved it. And yep, you can go ahead and deploy these early warning systems. Now, I typically mention that in class, and I remember teaching a few years ago. It was Security 511, and I shared the same story with my students. And this guy leaves the class right away, right? The classroom. He goes out. In the next break, he walks up to me and says, Ismael, I have to say, thank you for saying this, because I had the same situation in my company. My employer didn't allow me to deploy these things. So I told my boss, I called him, I said, look, thank you so much for sending me to this training. I'm sitting here and the instructor is talking about this new thing. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, what is it? It's called early warning systems. And guess what? They're open source, right? They're free. We can use them in this, and it's going to help us to detect these things that we need so badly. Awesome. So I can't wait for you to come back from the training and implement this. So think about it. Marketing, right? The words, the way you convey, the way you communicate these things matter.
If I could drop a meme in chat, there'd be a mic drop right there, right? I do want to call one thing too that's kind of related to this, and I'm not marketing this company by any means, but 16 personalities.
Okay.
I mentioned DISC, which is another type of these. It's free personality tests. One of the things that I think from a terminology, a marketing, telling stories, analogies that can be really helpful is if you fill something like this out and then you figure out how to get your boss's version. Like for me, I just, hey boss, take this and let me know who you are. And then you find out, like, I personally, for all of those waiting for the secret, I'm a mediator. I'm altruistic, booyah. But I have certain strengths and weaknesses, and it points them out. And then if you find out your boss, like my partner, Josh, what do you remember what you were? My partner's in here, sorry. He's an executive. See, it's this frigid woman with a ruler stick getting ready to whoop your butt.
That's so funny.
We actually have complementary strengths and weaknesses, and we actually have some issues where I step on his tail, he steps on mine, because our personalities conflict. And this actually does a pretty good job of talking about how, if you're this personality and the other person's this personality, how to communicate to each other. It's so weird, and it is strangely accurate. And that's one of the ways that you can actually take this, well, I don't know how to present this to them. Well, you can lean on others' expertise, like the 16 personalities, DISC profiles, and all these other personality things to see how your personality best can communicate to that personality. What do they expect? We're humans. There's been lots of psychological studies. That data is available for you to figure out. I don't know how this person ticks. They're crazy. Like my wife is, well, let's not go there, right?
Remember,
She's completely different than me. She thinks differently. And sometimes I'll phrase something to her and it's like she interpreted it a completely different way. And there are studies to show you why and how to reapproach that. So we can still open some questions here. We're at the end of this. We did 8 slides in an hour. We are awesome, Ishmael.
No, and I want to say it's only worthy. You know, like sometimes like, oh, you know, we like this technical stuff, and it's totally worth it to invest some time, you know, learning more about the psychology side of you know, human interactions, and this is applicable to everything in life. So you can underestimate the importance of that.
Don't leave the webcast yet though, because I want you to hear 2 things real quick.
Oh yeah.
One, totally have to pitch that this talk's based on Sec 530. It's the all-around defender. We cover a little bit of everything. Helps you architect and engineer and put these things together. It's an awesome coin with a beautiful coin. Yep. Okay, I made that pitch. Moving on. 2.
We have more stories. Yeah. Right.
Yep. 2. We have some mentor sessions that are not exactly SANS sponsored, but SANS, we're allowed to do these soft pitches, and these are free mentor sessions. They are not slides. There are no slides. They are slideless. You actually can have the microphone on and talk to us during these. They are effectively 1-hour sessions. We do once a month, and we literally can talk through anything. We usually poll and ask what people want to talk about. This next one, Scott, I'm going to point you there because you asked this about like the GSC and how I got there, but it's kind of related to this. Certifications, I think, is actually going to be session 3 next month. But here coming up next Friday, I think, is where do you learn about new technologies? How do you stay current? Like, you know, security is constantly changing. So if you're interested and want to be part of that discussion from a mentoring stance, go to thinkredactblue.com/mentor, check out our Twitter posts, and we're going to have more SANS webcasts coming anyway because, well, we do care. So I'll end on that soft touch to the heart. I love you.
And we're going to keep doing this because we keep having, you know, people attending and saying that they appreciate this. So, you know, thanks for your feedback. And yeah, this is going to be next Friday. Yep, absolutely. August 7th. All right, so we take it back to Jessica.
Yep, yeah. If there's any questions, let us now or forever hold your peace. If not, we absolutely, the site cert is expired. That's all you, Ishmael.
You broken?
Check out our Twitter post. It'll have the correct link. Apparently, Ishmael's domain.
Oh, it's a redirection thing. Okay.
We'll get that. No worries. If there's any questions, we could do a few minutes. Unless Jessica, if we're too far over, we can stop.
No, it's fine. We can wait a couple minutes.
So let's say maybe a few more minutes. If anybody has some last minute questions, we'll give you a second, and we'll kind of go from there. So we'll wait just about a minute. Scott, I'll answer your question in one of the mentor sessions or a different webcast, or you have my email or chat or phone number, so you can hunt me down. Okay. I'm going to assume that we answered all the questions during the session since we did them as we go. So I'll let Jessica, if you want to do the normal SANS closing statement, and I'll just say Ishmael and I, we appreciate everybody, and follow us on Twitter, and you'll see when our next webcast or mentor sessions are.
All right. Well, thank you to our speakers, Ishmael and Justin, for that great presentation, which helps brings this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.